have done is just restarted it, which I haven't done in a while, and that's sort of my bad. It should be all right in a minute. Okay. And we're back live. Not sure for how much longer. Doowood's still having his snack, and I am just giving my week in review. I'm going to see if I have come back online here. I should put that on my list, my to-do list, whenever I have a show, and just restart my computer. So you're going to get a Mac. I think you'll love it when you finally get into it and everything. I know I'm not really setting a great example for it, am I? With
no, not at all.
Problems I'm having with mine.
But I looked up the tech. I mean, the M1 Pro is the best processor on the market now. So even though if you have a crappy old Mac that can't even support what you're doing, the M1 is the best on the market now.
Oh, I don't doubt it. And what is that? That's not an operating system, is it?
It's a new chip.
Oh.
That I think the experts think that currently the PC chip, the AMD Intel chip is better than the current Mac chips, but the new M1 chip is better than the PC chip, and yeah, it's $2,500 for the. Maybe you get cheaper, like $2,000 if you get the 14-inch, but you have to get $2,500 for the new MacBook.
Well, seems like a great investment. Was there something that happened that finally changed it, or just seemed like the right time? I'm excited for you.
My current computer's working pretty fine. So last time I waited till I had problems with my computer. In fact, I bought a new one like the same day, and my computer died. I went out and bought this one. I think it was like $1,200. I got the pretty recent Dell, but I thought that I'd go all out and get like the top of the line new one, and this one probably even has a few years left on it. This is over like maybe 3 years old. Sure, how I think I had this computer from the very first time I streamed, so it's like maybe 3-4 years old, but it's probably still got a good few years. Especially if I get a new computer, then maybe I can even get another 3-4 years out of this one, and I'll use them for different purposes. But I'll stream from the MacBook.
That's great. All right, so it looks like I've got everything back to normal here, and hopefully it can handle it. Thanks to the 3 members of the audience who have come over to the next version of the show. My bad. Can't seem to stop this from happening, but a possible solution would be just for me to restart my shit computer at the outset, like right before every show type thing. Okay, so where were we? I'm gonna share my. Okay, just need to do one last thing here, which is screen share the right version of the internet. There we go. So I was mentioning this sciencenews.org, pretty interesting, and wanted to share some articles that I liked on it. They seem pretty in-depth for what they were. You know something, Daryl? You don't know the answer. You don't fucking know what you're talking about, but you don't. You have a dream, a sincere dream that computers can do something that they absolutely cannot do. And to continue to say that this dream is somehow realizable, realistic, and it's other people who just haven't gotten their act together enough to figure out your dream yet, it's just kind of ridiculous. How about saying stuff that is actually backable, upable with sound evidence? All right. Quantum particles, again, this particles notion. That's not real, but whatever. It's a very, very, very salient notion, apparently. Particles, just something that isn't going away as a concept. Why? Well, something about that, something about a point is very appealing to us. It's flattering to our ego. And what does that mean? It's probably bullshit, but I guess we haven't quite got to that point. We haven't integrated the mystical knowledge due to extreme egotistical arrogance to the point where we can actually learn quantum mechanics the way it's sort of needs to be learned to actually get results that actually go somewhere. Quantum computers. So this is cool. And there's something I wanted to mention about a problem and possibly a contradiction in a Copenhagen interpretation. And I'm not just talking about the oft-cited nonsensicality of the correspondence principle. I'm talking about the normalization condition, which is that since the collapse event is being modeled as integral, and this integral necessarily has a value corresponding to a probabilistic representation, basically the trivial solution of the probability that something happened, probability that an observation occurred is 100%. So what that's going to do is bind that amplitude of all the constituency of the wave function, which is said to be constituted, by its eigenstates, to the exclusion of none other. Like, they're hyper serious about this no hidden variables. There are no hidden variables outside the waveform. So we get this problem in defining the boundary of the waveform if we want to introduce a concept like entanglement because of the normalization condition. Where's the renormalization factor coming from? If entanglement is a thing, think of it as probability. Does it make sense for something to have 200% probability? Well, no, but maybe our quantum mechanics actually indirectly, it's not saying that explicitly, but it's indirectly saying it through its mathematical representations. Same thing with the Euclidean paradigm. Is it intentionally screwing people over from learning anything on deeper levels past 2 dimensions? Probably not, but that's sort of what it is doing. So when people start talking about, motive and intention and all this abstract vagaries, yeah, it is good to raise the old eyebrow, because it usually means they're trying to shift the domain into something where it's easier to slip some bullshit through under the doorway of reasonable doubt, as they say. Do I want to debate Daryl Frost on Debate Me Bruh? Yes, but I don't think he's going to do it. I'm not even sure he's ever been on Voice once. I've never heard him. So, I think he talks a big game, but really he's just a shit talker who's just like trying to trigger me. But yeah, got a couple other articles. So this is the Bohm effect. This is another interesting one, going through the history of quantum theory. I mean, this is pretty fresh. It's not like as soon as people learn this stuff, boom, everybody knew it. Like, even now in school, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty in the non-physics sense. And not everyone has the same opinions or understands these things exactly the same way. And so this article kind of goes into that and the major players who developed a modern understanding of quantum mechanics. Yeah, what would Daryl and I debate? Whether you can meaningfully delegate math to a computer. That's what I want to debate with Daryl. I'll take the negative, and you can take the positive and get pummeled into a tiny little scrap. on the sidewalk. All right, so again, I hate to ask this for a third time, but if there's any questions from before when the last stream got shut down, please put them in the chat again so I can answer them. Otherwise, I'll just come back to what I've been reviewing. I've got another year in review from Quantum Magazine. Oh, he's already got some excuses to not debate me. Just watch. The deluge of excuses. Here it comes. That's why I was saying we should just do friendly debates, but pre-plan them so that it doesn't look like an interview. I mean, we can still have a fun time, disagree a little bit. Nobody has to get disrespected, and everybody can have a fun time in the audience and learn something. Yeah, time crystals is one of the big ones that were more or less established beyond a reasonable doubt this year. So that's nice. And I suppose you could describe time crystals as a non-local hidden variables. I haven't really looked at the proof. The Bell's inequality allegedly proves or conclusively proves that there's no such thing as local hidden variables, but there are non-local. Of course, there are non-local hidden variables because the information exists in the universe, makes localization possible. In other words, it creates space. It's not subject to space. So yes, time crystals would happen. That would be a prediction of a proper understanding of space-time, which if you really focus in super hard enough, you can pull out of special, very particular interpretations of special relativity. But why do that? Why not just start with quantum periodic table? Yeah, nobody wants to say, well, that's God's, micro God, or that's a thought in the divine mind, or whatever we want to say. Like, we don't want to have that, but you can say that it's the root consciousness if you really don't want to look at it theologically. And then hopefully we don't have to end up in a situation where atheism is being conflated with denying consciousness, because really consciousness should not necessarily, your views on consciousness, do they have to be decided by religion, or should they probably be decided by an actual authority on consciousness? Just a thought. I think this is one from last week we've already seen. I'm just going to keep going. I'm not actually sure what. Oh, here's another one. There's a lot of people posting weird math stuff, like these sort of spook-tier math questions about mostly self-referential systems to try to trip people up on their intuition and get them thinking about absolutely worthless non-questions. But if you reframe in a simpler perspective, the quote paradoxes smooth themselves out. And yeah, I just thought of a structural implementational problem about functional representation of spheres on the purely theoretical level, that a sphere is sort of an anti-function in the sense of X and Y and Z that is expecting there to be a unique value for all of them. So you could say, well, there's a unique value of the sphere for all the values of the spherical coordinate system, but the problem is the intervals over which those are defined are counterintuitive, not self-evident, and speak to the structure of matter itself, which who knows that again off the bat with no indication. And when my religion says not possible to know it without God's divine grace, so it's kind of like, okay, there are going to be limits. Why? Oh, here's another great one, livescience.com. Non-random DNA mutations, just in time for David P. Neff to show up. Yeah, so whether biology promotes a model of random mutations it's a bit of a crapshoot. You could argue, well, it's random in the sense that that's what they're saying, that the actual mutations on the level of the genes, that the cause of those is indeterminate, but that the cause of one mutation's success, excuse me, relative to others, well, that's determined by something to do with the environment, Usually it's expressed as maximally adapted to the environment. And what I would word it from a militia principle perspective is that the animal's minimizing the effect of the environment on its body. So nice to see that there's some backup for non-random genetic mutations, which is exactly what you should expect from science progressing forward properly for the domain of that which is unknown to shrink in a reliable way, i.e., the results you're getting aren't going, completely contrary to all sanity. Not going to mention any names. Um, I actually can't remember if you mentioned this before, Doovid, the four color theorem. How I think it's like you could describe. It's taking a second here. It's no more
You
than four colors. Yeah.
you messaged that to me. I was reading about that in one of these books. The theorem goes back hundreds of years, and then it was proved with five colors, like over 100 years ago. But I think it was only decades ago, with the advent of computers, that they proved it to a four-color theorem.
Yeah, I'm sort of surprised the first time I'm seeing it, but makes me think it's something to do with the measurement limit again. Like I'm thinking we could prove these things with the measurement limit. I'm thinking maybe these quaternary formalisms like this, and what's the 1+3 or whatever it is. I said it
I mean,
wrong.
you could look. The Wikipedia
Collatz conjecture. There you go. I
the
remember.
Wikipedia will have the basic history, but saying it goes back hundreds of years. Yeah, so there it says the five-color theorem was proved almost 200 years ago, but the four-color one took till recently.
It looks like it was proven by software. Wow. I really want to see what that proof looked like. Oh, Daryl's gone off the rails. He just said something had nothing to do with the measurement limit. Well, it's the fundamental relation, so that might be a tough one. So yeah, I mean, we could talk a little bit more about the debate, but basically, I just want to know. I kind of feel like that was two ends of a spectrum. The one with Mark, that was just way in one direction, and then this one was way in the other direction, and maybe there could be some sort of happy medium sometime. Because it kind of comes back
You
to
have to talk more about programming and networking in general, and like the value proposition to like the personality to the debate, and then if it's a repeat of like you're going to debate evolution every few months, what are you trying to demonstrate by doing it, and what's your approach versus you're just having friendly intellectual conversations, or what does it mean to collaborate in your research with other people in other fields. And then even modern day debate, or key jump, like it's not really a venue. They're not very good at networking to create a venue for people to collaborate in their research. Like it's debate, it's confrontational, as opposed to like esoteric Doovidism chat that is more friendly and purposeful, and the ideas people are collaborating towards something greater. It's not entertainment. It's not even infotainment. It's the actual collaboration.
I guess to me, it seems if it's on YouTube that it is entertainment to some extent, but you're just saying it's purely educational.
Well, I think because it's not a program for the guest; it's a conversation that's just public. It's not a performance for the audience. It's a important conversation that's just being made public, and YouTube is the venue that it's being made public on. But it's not like a performance for an audience. It's a purposeful conversation that's just being recorded and live streamed.
Yeah, like my conversation with Mitchell Porter. Is that his name? That to me is the best type of conversation. It's on topic. There's no whatever you want to call it, aggression.
We're going to bring great minds together, have them cooperate in order to move society ideas forward, and then make it public towards anybody else that may benefit it, and even interaction where people could join in the conversation, and like modern day debate, not just like, oh, we're going to make another show and try to make money off of it or keep the people entertained, but actually like networking, like, oh, you're working on this, let me set you up to speak to this person because this person has certain pieces of information that are going to be useful for you and your audience.
Even though most audiences are coming to YouTube for entertainment?
That's what I'm saying. It's not me and you are just having a conversation that's being recorded and made public on YouTube. So we're not like, you call it like it's a show for an audience, like some. It's a conversation between me and you that's public, that other people could participate, and then YouTube is just the platform that we're using to do it. It's not like a weekly show that like audience are making money. It depends. But I think that's your value proposition, and then once you determine that, then you could have more meaningful conversations. So like my goal is to build an audience and make money, or something. Then you'll have a different value proposition than if you're trying to actually forward ideas, have important conversation, and then the use of technology, messenger, medium, receiver.
Yeah. And if you want to really convey something fundamental, then being on YouTube is not the venue for that. That's the way I see it.
YouTube could be a fine venue. I mean, so you're having a conversation with somebody because it's a worthwhile conversation, and you're putting it out there in the public because it's beneficial to the public, and you're opening it to the public um, because it's beneficial to be open to the public. And so, okay, if it's on YouTube, you might have some trolls or some detractions. Like you could do like a Zoom call and record the Zoom and post it later and be invite only. But no, I think YouTube's a fine venue. I mean, there's some detraction to it, but like no, I mean you could use YouTube. I don't think but I mean, if you really wanted to, you could do like a Zoom call, and you record it and post it later. Or you could do a Zoom call and live stream it, but only interact with the people on the Zoom call. I mean, there's technological solutions to whatever it is you're trying to do. You're saying, what is it you're trying to accomplish? And then what's the best technological solution to accomplish your goals?
My goal would just be, I like this format, to be honest. It's regular, it's a ritualistic type inquiry, and it's comforting. And it's giving as much information as possible. I don't know how much more information would be possible to give in something that was public in any way. I mean, most things are imparted from the master to the student directly on purpose. Because the chance of misunderstanding of fundamental stuff is like way too high to just talk about it even on a Zoom call with a bunch of people who may or may not be able to handle the information or what it entails on a practical basis personally. So to me, this
you
is
could live
fine.
under the camera. I'm not sure that, like, you could be completely public and have all your stuff public and all conversations public. It's just the level of your interaction level with the people who are observing. I mean, if you're a big guru, you might not have privacy ever. There might always be a camera on you, but your level of interaction with the people will vary under circumstance. So it could be you're just talking directly with the person, but it's public and people could view it and interact, or you yourself could be interacting with the viewers, and you could just strategize about that. You're saying like that it's not that difficult to work out a value proposition, like what's the purpose of the conversation, What's the benefit? What's the benefit to the audience? Cost benefit analysis.
The benefit is getting to listen. People with good vocabulary and understanding, and getting that intellectual benefit, plus whatever else people have a chance to ask whatever questions they want. I mean, to come back constantly to the value proposition, it's like, I don't know. I mean, there's some pretty shitty content out there getting a lot of views, so I don't know
I
what the
mean, like
value
Charles Noski
proposition
had
is
said,
there.
we're not even streaming to YouTube anymore, but it's just like he wants to reach as many people as possible, and he's putting it out on as many platforms as possible, and just to reach a few more people, he'll put it to a few more platforms, and he's not interactive. Saying that you're just trying to reach people, but not really interact with people, or the level like the interaction is only if you call in. That the design use of the technology, the way to interact, that the technology is designed. Um, I mean, you'll do the more you think that through, plot it out, speak with other people in the field, which is really one of the why I wanted to use Weekly Review in the first place for, is like a union of micro streamers to talk about technology and platforms and viewership and things like that, to just be straight out about what your goals are, what your intentions are, and what's the best use of the available technology.
Well, modern day debate seems like a start, but you completely shot that down, so it's a bit like,
Well, I mean, sure, I'm saying there's, um, I mean, you're saying like stroking your ego, increasing your name, your views, by saying it wasn't very intellectual. I didn't really learn anything. I didn't learn much from it. But yeah, I'm saying there's value in making money. There's value in getting your name out there. But doesn't mean that it was high quality intellectual content.
can you plug your microphone back in?
I'm still not done eating.
Okay. So, yeah, in terms of where to go with content, let's just keep doing what we've always done. And if people have questions, they can ask them in the chat. And people can rant and rave about how wrong I am. And I can keep saying, bring an argument that actually proves that I'm wrong. And I don't accept negative axioms. And I'll tell you why I don't accept negative axioms. And we can go from there. But that may not happen. So, may not have happened in quite some time. So, it's a probabilistic thing, perhaps, to look at it from that perspective. And the chances of it being wrong now, after all this time, sort of represent a diminishing probability in some sense. Someone was asking me to look at, I forget the guy's name, but some Westerner talking about Buddhist logic. Something apparently going past the classical logic, which is the three laws of thought, or I guess Aristotle's understanding of excluded middle, and really hammer that down. Non-contradiction and identity. Got a completely different perspective on this, obviously. So I would deny outright the idea that the universe is mathematical without any qualifications. Because if it seems like it's true, that's a sign it's probably some kind of an illusion. And we want to be believing in illusions, chasing things that are demonstrably less real than other things. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, but it's kind of good to know at the outset. Wonder Crab. Yeah, I remember what you were talking about Netty Netty being axiomatic. That's an extremely arrogant perspective to take. And to think that you can go against what has been established as the conventions and then say, well, actually, this is an axiom, even though it's never been an axiom before, it's an axiom now because I said so, because I can do this technique. I can't do the other techniques, but I can kind of do neti. And because I can do the technique, I want it to be accepted traditionally. It's like, I'm not saying I speak for the axioms of antiquity. I'm saying that if you want to take an understanding of math proofs that actually already exist as a thing, and broaden the range of types of math proofs you can do, i.e., deduce geometries from definitions. Just what math is doing. I have here. I can even pull it up. Hopefully, I have screen captured the Euclidean definition of Euclidean axioms. And guess what? My computer's frozen again. Isn't that great? Woohoo! Here we go again. So anyway, I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that this Quetzalcoatl thing, yeah, that's not just one thing. That's a lot of different things. It's a way of decomposing things. It's not a single interpretation. And I'm highly suspicious of people who want to present it that way. It's offensive to even think you could supplant established pramanas. Neti will never be a pramana, ever, because it's a type of analysis, i.e., something that happens once a pramana has been chosen. This is what we're looking at. Axioms that if you implement their definitions well enough, if you understand what you're doing well enough, you can get your more complex, quote, emergent system, complex, accounting for complexity and simplicity. Well, that's what we can do now. And how do we do it? Well, actually good approximations to matter waves. How do we get that? Well, proper understanding of math. How to get that? Well, just read my blog. And I'll show you how by constructing the numerals in the von Neumann way is great for certain things, but it has some problems. So what we want to do is understand that no matter how we frame something, it's a framing, which means we're excluding something. The nature of framing is exclusionary. And so any type of frame, anything that gives you information is necessarily excluding a huge amount of information. Conclusion, you need more than one. And it's not even like that's true between domains. You don't want to just study math and nothing else because there's no context. But within math, you don't just want to study one framing on how to do numerical approximations to distance, right? You want to look at all the different ones and see how together they give you different information that falls apart at different points. It's kind of the idea of 1 over x. Well, what's 1 over x at x equals 0? It's undefined. And what happens to the function near in the what they call the neighborhood of 0? It's badly behaved. There's a divergent limit because from the approaching from the positive direction, it's positive infinity. From the negative direction, it's negative infinity. They don't line back up. This is basically forcing everything to line up. Anyway, are you done eating yet, Doovid? Can you plug in your good microphone? Because there's a really big difference in the audio quality between it and just your computer.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I
it
mean,
sounds so much better.
but I mean, it's really to the proposition, saying like, am I just speaking to you or the audience, and even the question of motivations that or theology, like goal-oriented behavior, and even if people don't know their motivations or goals, it still people might function under larger categories of goal-oriented behavior. Yeah, I mean, streaming is better if it's goal-oriented, and the goals are probably more attainable when you actually strategize about them, talk openly about it, and even with your audience to discuss the value proposition directly with your audience. Saying like, why are you watching this? What are you gaining from this?
Hello, audience. Why don't you tell us in the chat what you're getting out of this show so we can serve you better?
And you like the self-improvement journey and the public self-improvement journey also to say, okay, like I'm going to, everybody is hopefully on a self-improvement process, but I'm going to publicly engage in my self-improvement process, put myself out there, and that will not only benefit myself in my self-improvement process, hopefully that I'll be able to improve myself at higher speeds, better uh, ways by doing it publicly, by crowdsourcing criticism, information, help, but it also is a good deed to be able to help other people in their self-improvement journey by being able to witness someone else who's publicly partaking in it.
Sure. Yeah. I guess what I would like is to see people going through a self-improvement, getting to share in people's self-improvement. That makes me very happy if they want to share their successes with me or their failures, but the successes are the best things to share.
Yeah, it could be a certain part of the audience may never share that, may share it, and
I don't know. I mean, you haven't lived my life and seen the way people change from knowing me for years, so I don't want to say faith here, but maybe it is a bit about faith. Is the audience going to put their faith in me or not? That'll make the difference as to whether they get something out of it, but they probably get some entertainment out of it either way and education.
yeah,
I
I
actually
don't
think
think
a lot
you
of
don't have to put your faith in me. I don't really think it's necessary. And people have different levels of improvement. Some people could just watch and gain the information, and never don't actually have to share or talk or tell you about it. That's fine. Other people could share their insight or um, also self-improvement works better as a group.
yeah, because it keeps people focused and on task, and it's nice to have friendly competition, i.e., like, you know, just sort of like it, I'm better kind of a. Can't think of an explanation that's not. Anyway, that's part of it. That's what I like about the T Jump Discord. It kind of seems like it is becoming more that way, or could be that way. I mean, there's still a lot of incredibly hostile negative energy there, but it seems to be getting a little bit better. Skyworks said they're here for the alternative perspective. Yeah, that's something I guess I was going for. Is that people would trust me to have good judgment. That would be nice. To be accepted as being good an authority on a particular domain, and not because someone thinks that that's going to like ingratiate them to me or something, but genuinely because people agree with my takes. That would be cool if that happened, but I'm not like dying for it to happen. Honestly, what I like to see is people having self-improvement. Is that all right? That's enough for me. Yeah. I think, when was the last time someone proclaimed themselves a polymath? Probably a really long time ago. I wonder if that's a problem. Basically, we don't have to talk about it right now, but I do actually want ideas, not just from Doooovid necessarily, but from anyone about how to improve that evolution debate. Now, given how ill prepared I was, and I I was a little hazy even on what side I was on, which I feel super dumb about. I do think it's good as like boundary conditions, because there was that one on T Jumps which was absolutely terrible shit show, and then this one which was absolutely wonderful, getting along best pals, which is like to the point of it not even being a debate. Where is the happy medium there? That's what we need to find. And that is the process of self-improvement that I'm willing to publicly go through because just so keen on that.
President, don't be dependent on external factors. I mean, saying like you don't have to wait for the next time modern day debate contacts you, or even just the fact that you have to be in
That's just
T-Jump
how I
server.
feel
You
comfortable. I feel comfortable because I think I don't want to say it's because I'm a girl, but that's what it feels like it is.
finding the fact that you can't create your own conversations. You have to be part of other people's conversations.
I
You
like
have
to
to
play
be
a
a follower.
supportive
You
role.
can't be a leader. You have to be a follower.
I like to play a supportive role in someone else's development. That is a leadership role.
You can't decide who you talk to. Other people have to decide who you talk to.
I wouldn't put it in quite so many words, but I'm definitely more willing to take advice from people that I've already vetted in terms of who I'll talk to. And then there are some people like,
I'm saying you don't decide who you talk to. Other people decide who you talk to.
well, I'd say that's partially true, but then it's also partially not true, I guess. Do the people I talk to count as deciding? I mean, nobody decided for us to talk.
Well,
Did
you
they?
did. You took out of your own initiative to, join the BAP stream.
Well, yeah, I was already a fan. I mean, I'd seen all the crushings, but also all the audience horrible reactions, which, as you know me now, those would have been major pluses in the me evaluating you columns. Don says he likes me when I'm seeking, not so much pushing. All right. Not sure what that means, but yeah, whatever.
And I mean, it could be your personality is not versatile enough to, God forbid, even just say like be friendly. And so if you're on another platform, you don't really have to be friendly because you're not being brought there to be friendly. You just have
I
to
like to be
perform, and you
cordial
could
and
be
friendly.
unfriendly.
I like to be cordial and friendly, but people say things that are unbelievably offensive, and it's like I cannot not respond to certain things because then it's kind of like in a way not saying anything is, I don't want to say approving, but it's
Well, so that limits your places where you'll be able to perform. I mean, so
well, I
if
think
you want to,
if it's clearly laid out at the beginning what the parameters are, it's fine. And I don't
I'm
know
just
how
saying
you
that
could say that I wasn't friendly to that guy. I mean, I don't even know what you're talking about at this point.
well, even that was
Friendly thing.
relatively a friend. But I'm saying that, I mean, you're not that successful as a host. You can't. You're not really good at
Right.
attracting people to your channel to have conversations, or even scholars or intellectuals to get them into your.
Well, I think
Your
that scholars and intellectuals would probably prefer to speak to me not on YouTube. That's my guess. Some people will want to talk on YouTube, and that's awesome. And I want to give them a chance to do that, but I don't want people to think
I'm
like,
not sure.
I have to do this because I think it's probably pretty intimidating to go on YouTube.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, if you had scholars and intellectuals willing to talk to you, they'd probably talk to you on YouTube also.
Well, how's that go exactly? It's think of a value proposition for them.
I mean, it's saying that you just reach out to people and ask them to have a conversation. There's nothing super complicated about that.
Man, it means that I'm soliciting people, which goes against my religion. So it's like, why am I soliciting people again? If it goes against my religion? Yeah, I guess I am kind of, what do you call it, superstitious about that.
Well,
I just can't help it. I'm highly religious.
you could say more. Maybe say that more like I'm saying that you fail at it, and therefore you explain that like, oh, it goes against your principles, but really
Oh,
it's a defense for your
okay, you can
failure.
yeah, okay. Well, I mean, if you wanna spin it that way, um,
Seems more
that's
likely. I mean,
fine.
because it seems like just your failure to be able to attract interesting people to your platform to advance your teachings or even talk about your teachings.
I am talking about my teachings, aren't I?
You mean, well, I mean, you really only like I'm the only one you found to talk about your teachings with, and like you can't even really talk about them by yourself, and you haven't really been able to find anybody else to talk about them. I saw Luke was streaming with Elliot again.
Oh,
But
nice. How's that?
I'm saying you've been streaming now for like 3 years. Like you'd be better off if you had like a whole rotation of tens, hundreds of regulars, or if you had a index of like tens, even hundreds of interviews of people that have been on your platform. So it's we call it a personal failure on your part. It's probably the most accurate way to put it. I mean, if it's blow to your ego to look at it as a personal failure and you want to put it in different terms, or if you want to reject that it's a personal failure. But I think I mean most accurate would be to call
Um,
it a personal failure.
okay. Well, if you wanna call it personal failure, that's fine. And you wanna add to the pile of failures of not having gotten far enough in my book, you can do that too. I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
really
saying
like to
just that
frame it like that, but
there's a relatively objective goal that hasn't been met, and so you're going to call it a personal failure. And I mean, you could put it in a more different terminology but that, I think most objectively you say like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty agreeable that this was like a goal that any reasonable person would have had, and the person failed in reaching it, and so it's a personal failure. So I go, how come you're not a millionaire yet? Well, a personal failure. Like I didn't succeed as much as I had planned on due to my personal failures. Like, or like, how come I'm old, unmarried, without children?
so
Like,
saying how come I'm not a
personal
millionaire,
failure.
just
I
saying
could blame
inflation
other
hasn't
people.
gotten bad enough yet, that's not a good answer.
I could blame other people for my failings, but I was saying that no, I'm saying they take responsibility for my own failings as my personal failure.
Okay, so me
And then
not
then even to put
having
it back, like, no, I didn't want to be a millionaire. Like, I didn't fail. I just didn't want to do it, and that's probably even worse. So like be the better man and admit to the personal failure, as opposed to lowering your ambition or you're probably even a false state. It's like no, I mean like a free will type thing. Like
every
had you made
time I have
had you made better
every time I've
decisions, you would
pretended
have
to want
succeeded,
something
and
just
the
to get
lack of
along with other
failure is due
people,
to the poorness of our
it's worked
decisions.
out like shit for me to pretend to like things just to get along with people. I hesitate to do it now. Skyworks asks if consciousness follows a path. Well, what's a path
Right,
exactly?
so you're so used to failure that you expect failure. Is what you're saying, or you're saying that not only you're so used to failure, you're used to disaster that you've embraced failure because at least it's better than extreme disaster that you've
I feel
experienced.
like I've been on a trip. I feel like
So,
I've been
so
on. Okay,
you've embraced and celebrate
hold on a
failure
minute here.
because
Let me
it's
just say
better than.
something here. I feel like I've been on a 200-ish year mission that I completed when I discovered the quantum periodic table. And this is a vacation kind of ish. I mean, yes, that was 7 years ago, but 200 years versus 7 years, yeah, still a vacation. Consciousness is the discovery of the path, okay? So the path isn't there. Something is there, matter is there, hazy matter is there until consciousness suffuses it and discovers a path. Path discovery equals consciousness, and mechanism of consciousness, waveform reduction. Very simple. Conservation of, it's a bit tricky, but it's like a waveform surface tension. But there's always loss in mechanical systems. Obviously, what do we have? Thermal loss, right? Entropy. So never perfect. but we can see how we can get closer to perfection, i.e., the less entropy affects the system, the more light like it is, the less impedance it has on its own self actualization, aka path discovery. Just think of it as light in a liquid form pouring through something that wasn't quite a rivulet yet. In the eyes of most of the people who care about me, yes, I'm a complete failure, Doovid. You're not the first.
Well, and
You
just be
won't be the last.
objective about it and saying a complete failure by saying that you have failures, and the way to avoid failures or to have success is to admit your failures and say, no, I mean, that's where you say that you embrace failure, like, oh, I'm a complete failure. So,
Well,
no,
to me,
maybe your
something I could have
successes.
failed at. Here's something I could have failed at. I could have jumped on another mission too quickly and not taken a vacation. And I didn't fail at that. And I feel good for not failing at that. So there's that.
I mean, you haven't completely failed as a streamer. You still have 1,000 subs. You're over 1,100 subs. You became a mod on T-Jump platform, a regular on
Well, that was because
MDD.
I paid for it. That was completely without anything other than paying. So just to be clear.
But I mean, you failed in one of the essentials of streamers, like the networking aspect in building up a network.
That's true. Does consciousness have a beginning? The process starts whenever waveform reduction starts. But does it have a beginning in terms of like universal beginnings? Not really, no. It's part of everything. It's the ground of observation. If you want to think of it that in that sense. So going forward, I do all the debates friendlily and hopefully improve my image to the point where people want to come on the channel. I want to stream with a purpose, and to me, the purpose is sort of unclear when people only want to come on to talk about their own ideas. Then I have this duty to research their views, and I'm not sure that's worth it.
Well, I mean, you could take each situation by situation. So you could handle. I mean, you might. I mean, you could still, do T-Jump and MDD, and that those might, or the platform or other venues. But like at some point, you say, okay, you want to cooperate with other people, you're going to have to come up with a different way of streaming that make it more amenable to working together with people. And it's not going to be like challenging them to a debate. You're saying like, no, like I have a conversation where you have some understandable value propositions, like challenging people to a debate. Most people don't want to be challenged to a debate, but your average person.
Reason number 6,954 why modern society's got problems. If everybody actually loved the idea of being challenged to a debate, imagine how many of our other social problems would just
So most people want to have a friendly conversation. Like your average person, even with your questionable person, will be willing to have a friendly conversation.
Don't know about that. I'm reminded of the time that I was bicycling, and you're supposed to signal by pointing in the direction that you want to turn. And I did that, and someone like chased me down in their car and yelled at me, alleging that I'd given them the finger. And I was pointing to turn left, and he was like, thanks for letting me yell at you. But that wasn't a friendly conversation at all. So perhaps the friendly conversation comes after.
If you say your inability to just express and then do what you say. I mean, say you reach out to someone and saying, this is what you want to talk about and why you want to do it, and then to follow through and talk about what you want to talk about and be honest in your reason for doing it. You're like, oh, I'm researching and promoting this subject, and you have expertise or research in this area, and the audience or whatever, and therefore, it's relatively sensical. That the person would look in like, okay, this is why this person's reaching out to me and wants to converse with me, and it's sensical that they would look into it and say yes, and then it would be done in a manner that it would be successful, that like post after it happened, that it would be mutually beneficial in a relatively indisputable, obvious way.
Hard to imagine what that might look like. And Daryl asked what waveform reduction is. I'm gonna diagram GIF.
That's what most streaming is. I mean, like Lipton Matthews or something like that. You're just, or even Charles Moskowitz, just a regular radio talk show, normal, just typical radio talk show. But I was saying, if not like a radio talk show like Charles Moskowitz, or if it's like Lipton Matthews, and it's intellectually driven, or you're talking to people who are published and writing papers, and you want to discuss their recent paper, and especially if it's topical, you're saying like, I'm studying this is my interest, and I read these things, and I found you because you wrote this paper on the subject that I'm interested in, and I have an audience that's interested in these things, and that's why I invited you to my platform to talk about this with me and my audience. I mean, it's relatively sensical, and it's saying it's even mainstream and typical. It's just like if you had ashram or a synagogue and you invited someone to speak at your synagogue, there'd probably be some reason. Like if you're in Detroit and you want like a politician or business person, journalist to come to your synagogue, it's relatively straightforward. It's like, like, okay,
you don't see how it's a bit daunting to bring someone on who's a subject matter expert. You don't see how that's a daunting loser of a proposition for me on its face. I just want to answer
pretty
Daryl.
Simple. I mean, just
Daryl's
like
not understanding what the fuck I'm saying.
I have like hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel, like IRL. Like you just invite somebody to come speak at your institute.
Yeah, but sometimes I'll just be like trying to talk and then just nothing comes. Like I'm telling you, it's just I've preferred.
Sometimes they go better than others, but it's like, okay, like you would make the event, and if it didn't go as well as you hoped, like, okay, you still made the event. It's not like
okay. I want to answer Daryl here. Reduction is when it gets compressed, genius. Amplification is when it gets expanded. If it's a closed waveform, those two things happen at the same time. The heartbeat waveform is semi-closed. So there's a separation, okay, going into the body, going out of it, going into it, going out of it. Reduction is shrinking, and then anti-reduction or amplification or whatever you want to call it, just the key thing is that there is some type of a conservation of tension of the surface, but it's not always 100% conserved based on how much is lost thermal radiation. Not complicated, and it's also not a torus. Take a look in the very middle. Got a tied up thing. Sorry, I just really wanted to get past that because I don't know what else to call it if not waveform reduction. That would seem to be the right term, and I don't like to change nomenclature, but in this case, I don't have a choice. So, I think the solution to what you're saying, or the next step in terms of self-prover for me, is figure out how to have the debates in a more friendly way and get a better way of doing the evolution thing, whether that involves prepping.
I wouldn't worry about the debates. I'm saying like you should worry about just having normal, friendly conversations.
I should be worried about having normal, friendly conversations.
Yeah, I don't worry so much about debates. I'm saying like that there's really not that many debate platforms, and it's saying like even like modern day debate, you're gonna wait like another few months till they re-put you in the rotation for another debate. And you like it probably doesn't matter. You don't have to be friendly for that. And even if you wanted to host your own debates, I think you should probably start by just having friendly conversations to network and have a rotation of people that will be willing to work together. So like I don't think you need to worry about your debates. You need to worry about just having normal, friendly conversations and having people that want to have long-term networking, working relations with you. And like improving at debate's not going to get you that.
Isn't it?
probably not. Even if you got much better at debate, it probably wouldn't.
It's just sort of mind-boggling. It's like friendly as the
I'm
internet's
saying,
not a
like,
very
no, it's
friendly
impossible.
place.
You can't. You're not capable of being friendly.
It's not
You know,
that. I'm saying
like,
the
it's just
internet is not a
too
very
much.
friendly place.
Well, no, I'm saying, like, look in the mirror. It's probably you.
The internet is not a very friendly place. That's nothing to do with me.
Well, it isn't saying, like, okay, like, I'm friendly in unfriendly places. The world's not a very friendly place, but I'm still try to be friendly even in unfriendly environments.
Yeah, I guess that's something to work on for me. You're sort of holding up friendliness like it's a supreme virtue. Oh. I'm just honestly maybe not enough of an extrovert to be able to do what you're talking about.
You don't need to be an extrovert to be friendly or to network.
It's not about being friendly. It's about being involved in a lot of streams. Do I want to do that?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of streams. You could really just, like, probably in less time, like the same week in review, and the less time than we spend on week in review could probably still do that and accomplish more.
Do what exactly? You mean just time?
Create a larger network, just have a rolling flow of people coming through that your network can speak to briefly on week in review.
People who are involved in ongoing research in extremely specific domains, interested in going on a show with very little value proposition and a bunch of trolls.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it'd be that different. I mean, like, I don't invite people to the show because you're not very friendly to them. But like, I think it wouldn't be difficult to just invite people and they'd get them on. And I don't think that. I mean, the trolls. I think long term. I mean, your audience is representative of your karma. So saying like those are your people. If they're your trolls, it's because they're your people. If you don't feed the trolls, they'll go away. Or at least be drowned out by come up with a way to deal with trolls.
You haven't been involved in spiritual outreach for very long, have you, Doovid?
I've been involved with spiritual outreach now for over 20 years.
Yeah, so not very long at all. After a while, the whole thing becomes somewhat passé. One goes looking for increasingly more difficult challenges, and that is simply natural progression of things. I've had to defend my own principles forever, and I'm fine with it. But usually people who want to hang out with me end up just, being okay with it and explaining things to other people on my behalf. You didn't tell Arjun, anything about showing me any respect. He disrespected something fundamental to my religion, which you didn't side with me on, or I don't know what you did, but probably certainly didn't back me. That was
tried to avoid
how
dispute.
it ended up. I would have preferred it go a different way, but that would have involved you telling him, Jen, pretty sensitive on certain topics. I wouldn't disagree with Jen because she's not going to take that well, especially on a super important topic.
I didn't take his side against. I didn't take his side. I didn't take his side. I just avoided dispute.
Well, if it was on your channel, I'd be backing you up. That's for sure. And somebody else was doing that to me, on principle.
Well, I mean, it's generally better to avoid dispute. Like, I need your side in dispute.
Zico didn't like what I said, yet I'm the one who's the bad guy. And it's always like that.
So it's another person who doesn't want to work with you because you chose to escalate dispute.
No, he did.
for
He
no
did.
reason.
He did. No, he chose to
And
escalate dispute. I'm completely fine. He chose to escalate dispute and couldn't back down on his own egotistical presupposition that the
either way,
supreme
that I
God
mean,
is personal, and that's fine.
so even at this point, you're still in a state of dispute. Like
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not
Because
in
the
this.
point I don't want to have to repeat myself, and I feel like I've already asserted this many times.
But yeah, I mean, so you're full of conflict and dispute. You're constantly in a state of dispute.
I'm resolving conflicts and disputes.
And
I'm bringing about a state of
it's
non-conflict and
largely the
dispute.
cause of your failure as a streamer.
Well, that's something you can feel great about. You're a bigger
I don't
success
feel
as a
great about
streamer
your
than me.
failure. I mean, God forbid.
Well, you should for egotistical reasons, because that's all anyone ever does, according to you. Savor
Ego is
my
a fact.
failure as your
I
success.
mean, your failure negatively affects me. So I mean, just the fact that I'm right about maybe your bad qualities that are causing your failure, but saying no, I mean, your failure negatively affects me. That's why I keep on harping it, because like saying that like your failure is negatively affecting me.
How exactly?
Because it negatively affects my ability to network. That as we can review and Doooovid, and I can't even bring on. I can't occasionally. I might have to bring on people. Even we got Andrew Wilson and Ralph and Carl on recently. But yeah, I mean, like I don't even really reach out to people to have them on, because I think it's unlikely they'd
I guess with someone with those types of people,
have a
what are the
positive
chances
reception.
there? I guess to me, what's the point of having those people on? They don't actually give a shit about anything that I care about. What's the point of having them on? They're probably going to bring the topic into something that is A, boring as hell, or B, going to get the channel in trouble. So yeah, it's like, I don't blame you for that, but to me, the value proposition is very low. By being this way, it's comforting to people because I'm very predictable. Is there no value in that?
Oh, there's some value in it. I mean, so you got your 1,100 subs. You get a few hundred views on this.
Well, I mean, if you want to frame it as a failure, it's like, okay, you can frame it as a failure, but to me, it's a very slow moving.
I mean, you can't even afford a computer that doesn't. I mean, you can't even afford like more than a crappy computer. God forbid. I don't know, make fun of you for being poor or something, but like God forbid, like you can't buy yourself a decent computer.
Yeah, I sure am pathetic.
Well, I don't make fun of a person for being poor, but saying yeah, I mean that's also something that's going to affect your streaming ability. We got Gandalf in the chat. Your biggest fan from your biggest fans. I don't know. Maybe Gandalf wants to come out. I'll even sign off if I think I'm wrapping up because I think I don't have too much more to say. Just repeat myself again and again. If you want to continue rambling, or maybe Gandalf wants to come on, you could. Maybe he'll cheer you up or.
Well, as hard as it may be to believe, talking to you actually does cheer me up quite a bit, even though you are a tad Eeyore-ish at times. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if Gandalf wants to come on the show. It's probably a little late. I don't know how long we've been going here. This stream's been going for an hour and 8 minutes, and yeah, it's been great. I want to have more quote success streaming. I don't want to compromise on my values, and I just need to keep pushing forward as what that means. And just thanks for your patience, I guess. Hey, Gandalf.
Hey, good
Do you want to say it?
I heard the last 5 minutes or so of your conversation, and I think your consistency and predictability is very good. As I said in the chat, any leader that I think to some degree I don't know how strong a prerequisite it is or how important it is, but it would seem that being consistent and predictable is a very necessary strategy to develop when you live in a society whose seed corn of social capital has been consumed almost to the bare ground.
We thought it was personal trait as opposed to what makes for successful streaming. So I'm saying her failures in streaming aren't necessarily, I mean, they probably are to some extent, but they aren't necessarily correlated to failures in personal life or survival. You're saying just
Well, these failures are news.
Networking failures or something, saying that, like strategy for being successful in networking or something like that, has parallels to all aspects of life. But I mean, it's more a specific science, like, networking, streaming, and it's not necessarily, like personal, that if you fail at one venue, like your failure as a person, and every field has its individual expertise. So like what it takes to be a good streamer or a good networker doesn't necessarily mean that a person can't succeed in many other venues.
I don't mean to interrupt. I guess I'm just kind of shocked and surprised, and I didn't see where this was going because I maybe came into this conversation a little late. But Jen failed in anything streaming. I mean, yeah, I might not have followed up with as much streams lately, but I just don't see any evidence or basis to determine that whatsoever.
It's relative. I mean, she succeeded more than you. She's got 1,000. She's got 1,100 subs. She still has a regular weekly program. She became a regular on MDD and T-Jump. So I mean, failure relative. I was saying that she failed to network and have be able to have a guest. Basically like a few years in, like I'm her only recurring guest, and even the handful like you, memes, Wonder Grab, that she hasn't been able to successfully network like a large portfolio, or even to use the technology for its most basic way, which would be to reach out to the people you find interesting, bring them on your platform for a conversation. So I'm saying failure from a goal oriented for what I would say is like basic goal, positive thing that she should be able to do and has failed to do, versus like obvious success. She has over 1,000 subs. She still has a weekly program, and whatever, you never hit 1,000 subs. You never were sustained a regular program.
Well, you don't know my goals for what I consider success in streaming. So I think
those are generic goals that saying that would be. Obviously, everyone has their own personal intentions, but something that would be objectively a success. Like getting monetized, hitting 1,000 subs, creating a regular program, becoming a regular guest on a major platform. That okay, like those are benchmarks that you can. So get Jennifer hit those benchmarks. You didn't. So you just weasel and be like, God, that wasn't my goal to hit those benchmarks, but they're objective benchmarks that like you could say she hit, you didn't.
Yeah, I don't really care about having thousands of subscribers. So I mean, the basis for that judgment, in my view, is just unfounded.
Are you actually
it's a benchmark
Doovid?
that was it's an objective benchmark. You created a YouTube channel. It's just an objective benchmark that was hit or not.
Are you past 2,000 subs, Doovid? Are you coming up on 2,000, or did you pass 2,000 yet?
Yeah, I think I'm at like 2,050 or something, 60.
Nice. That's really good. Can't wait till I'm at 2,000. I'll be as cool as Doovid.
Oh, I think it's better to have a cozier number. Quality matters more than quantity. I'd rather have 20 just great followers to have just cozy time laughing at memes and talking about math and physics than have 2,000 idiots, pretending they're all not midwits when they are just midwits.
Well, that's the difference between you and I.
Yeah, I'm kind of more with Jen, though, right?
Yeah, but they're quantitative, objective benchmarks. So I mean, you said like okay, like I'd like to be poor, or you know, like the money in your bank or your test scores or something that you know you could give some sort of, but there's still objective benchmarks
Objective how?
that they're quantifiable, measurable, some measurable sign of success. So you say, "Oh, I define success in you know whatever way you define success," but you still say from an objective level that there's quantifiable, objective ways of defining success. That you know you could always say like I define success in my own way, but it doesn't mean that the quantifiable, objective benchmarks of success still aren't you know meaningful or even you know say objective.
Jen, I simply just don't understand that way of thinking. It's just not how I define success at all. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
I
but saying
don't
that
understand.
you could define words in your own way, but it doesn't change the fact that there's objective standards of how things are defined. So saying according to the way I see things, but you know your average person might not care you see things. They want to see things according to objective, quantifiable measures.
Oh, well, if we learn anything about human nature, at least 80% of people don't even like the kind of factual, logical way of thinking even necessary to even pretend to be objective. So that makes no sense to me either.
No, I mean, it's pretty clear, like you know play chess and like you know like usually the first thing people ask is like what's the score. You know like you know, generally you know
Bad
you
pop
take a test, the first
mentality.
thing people ask is like how'd you do, and you say well I had my own standard that like based on like how I think I did, and it's like no like what was score, how'd you do, what'd you get, or like you got a job, like how much do you get paid. So you say, "Oh, I have my own measurement of what I consider success," but you know, your average person, you know, wants typical things that are considered like objective, like a dollar amount, a number, something quantifiable. You know, like how many subs do you have? Um,
I don't, why do I care what the average person wants? It makes no sense to me.
because it's quantifiable and objective. I'm saying the
I
average
don't, I
person
don't
wants it because it's you know it's the most logical, it's the most objective, quantifiable standard that we have. That's
Yeah, the
why
average person just wants money thrown at them like they're a stripper at a strip joint.
I'm not
Okay.
talking about. I mean, what people desire, but saying what people achieve. And you say, okay, well, like I achieved what I wanted according to my own subjective standards, but you're saying, well, what's objective achievement? And then you look at that in some sort of quantifiable way. So,
And why are your quantitative metrics the correct metrics? That makes no sense to me.
well, I mean, you need you know, call like an objective standard to create the metrics. I'm just going like a standard.
We have the objective standard. It's called the laws of physics and habits of nature, and Jen has provided the next leap in quantitative understanding by doing the unified field model. So you have the authority right in front of you. Do it, and you could just ask her, "What is the objective standard?"
Well, I mean, like the you know like accomplishment so much that it didn't pay enough for her to even buy a computer that doesn't crash in the middle of a stream.
Well, maybe it was meant to crash in the middle of the stream.
Yeah, that was
For you to
funny.
judge that.
Saying I'm putting in a complaint. That was too funny for someone who allegedly doesn't like humor.
Me or Doovid. What was funny?
Yeah, I'm just saying like science, like things could be measured. Things could be you know, once they're measured, they could be compared against each other.
Well, Jen, help me describe what you find so funny about all this, or help me understand, I should say. If you.
Well, I mean, it was just tone of voice. Honestly, it had a melodic upturn at the end, and also content being funny.
Oh yeah.
The problem is that deadpan is in right now, and deadpan and monotone and extremely sarcastic are somewhat, I don't want to say indistinguishable, but there's a large similarity.
Well, they seem to kind of have the same kind of. I don't know the right term, but like this is going to be a bad way. Well, I can't think of the language, but like energetic harmonics to them. They seem to vibrate in similar ways. I don't know if it would be amplitude or frequency. I mean, but it might be something like that. I mean, this is just a really shitty hypothesis, probably, but that's if I'm thinking about the phenomenon and trying to apply some imagination to it, that's how I think it probably works. But tell me where I'm wrong. I'm probably off somewhere.
Okay, I'll sign off. I'll let you two talk. So nice to hear from you. Welcome back, and God bless. Have a great week, everyone.
Okay, I'm going to work on being friendlier in the interest of your YouTube career, and it's just really hard for me to know exactly what that would entail.
You're one of the friendliest people I've ever met. I don't understand that anyone could see you as unfriendly. To me, that makes no sense.
It's just these things. It's like it's because I won't back down on certain matters of principle, and then turns into a you know.
A prick waving contest?
Yeah, my
What does it mean?
alternative would have been to back down. But if you back down once, then you gotta back down all the time.
Yeah, I mean, if see once you
So my
get
solution is just avoid the situations where it's gonna end up like that.
yeah.
It doesn't have to turn into that at all times, and it almost never does, frankly, on a statistical basis. It's just YouTube is the place for that sort of thing to happen because of the
Well,
type
it
of people
seemed
that go on YouTube.
yeah, I think it's one of the reasons that I just don't stream very much anymore, to be honest, Jen.
Well,
I
there's no value proposition. I would say just, it's not worth it. To me, this is worth it because I come up with these new ideas and I get to share them. And it's a lot of fun. And I just wrote a blog article. So I don't know how many views it got. Not that many, but some. So
hey, I think if just 10 people of my IQ or higher, hopefully higher, just start kind of like totally vibing with you, and we're just laughing at memes, talking science, math, philosophy, shooting a shit and being just chill, or whether IRL or on streams or whatever, it's worth it. Because at this point, I just don't need to talk to cabbages and nitwits and midwits anymore. It's not
funny.
worth it.
Someone in the chat was saying a midwit is 120 IQ. I mean, isn't technically a midwit 100 IQ? Isn't that the point?
Well, there's other dimensions to midwittery. I mean, having gone to graduate school and been surrounded by people whose processing power would seem to align with what a 120 would correspond with, there's an obsessive desire to seem like they're one of the in crowd or one of the really smart ones. So their processing power is high enough that they could simulate being, an elite technocrat or expert, quote unquote, like, the kind of cults that we're in now, cults of experts, because they have a fancy degree from an Ivy College or whatever, or a government position, or they're a CEO or something. People look at them as experts. And those 120 people, can simulate that really well. But they really resent the people in my 140, 150 range who really want to be experts, not just feign looking like it and be like crabs in a barrel, just eating each other alive to be.
See, that's funny. I see it the complete
on
opposite
TV.
way. I see it the complete opposite way. I see midwit as something that only 120s respond to.
Oh,
As a way
okay.
to like beat them into, I don't want to say beat them into the line, but it's like, you don't want me to go like, midwit. Oh my god, I just put a soy jack meme on your thing. I just proved you with a soy jack meme already. What was that thing you showed me before?
Oh,
God, that was so good. I think it's
oh.
just growing pains. I think maybe Doovid is a little stressed about the cumulative effects of all the lockdowns and everything. I mean, who can blame him? I'm sure a lot of people are going through a similar thing.
Well, my favorite meme about the lockdowns is the one with Jack Nicholson from The Shining. If you lock someone in their house, they'll never go crazy, right? And then people just remember the axe going through the door of that movie. I mean, doing that movie, I think scared Shelley Duvall half to shit that she never did another movie again, if I recall. Yeah, lockdowns, we're going to have major psychic effects. I mean, putting the entire planet on house arrest is just, it's an interesting psychic space for people to be in. And it's, I don't know. I'm sad that Doovid's sad, though. I mean,
Did you read my latest blog post?
I fell asleep in the middle of it because I was talking with you, and because I live, I work a graveyard shift job, so I'm always fighting sleep. Oh, metaphysics too. Oh well, you showed me. I have the meme, the four existential orders. You gave that to me separate from this blog post. That's a really cool meme, by the way. But I need to read it. Yes.
I think it's technically a diagram. I don't want to call it a meme because to me, a meme has to have. Okay, it doesn't have to have a joke, but it's a tableau. Like to me, if you
Okay.
can't, because as soon as there's like a box, it's not really a meme anymore. In the sense, like I call this a diagram. It's actually
Okay.
a superposition of self-referential diagrams. I mean, the whole thing in a way is a bit of, I don't want to say a joke. It's like joke adjacent. I mean, is it a joke?
Oh, okay.
Is it
Okay.
a joke
I
to
like that.
self-referentialize? Is it definitional that you're going to have to self-referentialize self-referential abstractions, or is that a
Yeah.
pithy joke? Who cares? Who knows really?
Okay. All right. That's nerding out a little bit, but that's cool. I like your would it be your disambiguation, I would say, to get the correct term. I like the fact that you're pretty fanatical about trying to define things correctly and making sure they align with solid axioms and follow correct logic. I like that a lot. Something I very, very much value in your approach to things, and you seem pretty unparalleled in the ability to do it. I mean, I've not encountered anyone better. And, well, I'm pretty well educated.
Thanks. It's been a while, to be honest.
I'll say, as a former educator, certainly not, at your level, but, successful enough that I'm probably better than your average public school COVIDian Karen teaching kids right now. And that shit show that everyone's complaining about. You have a very good approach to pedagogy, and I'm very demanding that students kind of be in a good frame of mind to be receptive and learning and just discussing ideas without purity spiraling and getting lost in psyops and other crap. They're just sticking to ideas and trying to be very down to earth. I mean, I've wanted that for years, and just within the circles of people I discuss things with and share memes with. I mean, the memes are just funnier and danker than ever, but they're sophisticated and people are thinking about complex ideas, without resorting to stupid tropes. I mean, all the kinds of weird autistic spurgy groups, whether it be Nick Fuentes trad cats to OV's Shitler worshippers to
Let's
the people
not.
that
Let's not
are
give
all
a
gone.
fucking. Let's not go down this path right now.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just.
I want to keep the show for talking about the subjects I'm
Oh,
interested in, not
my
the
bad.
absolutely ridiculous shit shows of YouTube drama and the idiots
Oh,
on
I'm
YouTube.
sorry. I
Yeah, I
forgive
mean,
me.
I'm still sort of stuck in the whole idea of like how to do the whole relations thing.
Oh,
It's very political.
really?
Yes, it's somewhat political.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, I always say stuff that inflames people.
Really? Well, yeah. I mean, I remember when I first encountered you. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Well, I was
This is
doing things differently. There was a period where I basically didn't talk about anything except reincarnation. I don't want to say I spoke of nothing else, but there was definitely a time where I just tried as hard as I could to legitimize that belief in some sense. So,
Yeah, and that's when when I encountered you and talked with you, people were making memes that you were like escaped some mental asylum and stuff in response to whenever you would post something about reincarnation that didn't seem crazy by my eyes, but people respond that, oh, you must be crazy or something. That's just what I remember what that was like, experiencing how you related with other people. I don't know. I didn't think you were some kook or crazy person when I started talking to you. It was just weird time.
Yeah, lots changed. Lots changed. So, perspectives and assimilations and knowledge and such. It takes a while to work.
I'm sorry I started talking long-winded there. I just
It's
missed you a
fine.
lot.
Daryl's saying it's controversial, not political. Yeah, Daryl, think about it. Create a controversy, it has to be resolved. That's political. Resolving controversies equals politics. Managing controversies equals politics. Jeez. Dunning-Kruger. It's like that's never gonna not be Dunning-Kruger with these people. They're always gonna be in the chat like, I gotta teach you a lesson right now.
It's so true. Jesus Christ. Oh.
It's hilarious because I just, okay.
Yeah. I've missed y'all. It seems the vibe here seems so much. I'm looking at the chat too. The vibe here seems so good. I'm just happy that you're still streaming 119 episodes. You should be very proud of yourself. You've done a very good job being very faithful. I'm impressed.
It's not 119, it's like 137, but because the stream got effed up, it reverted to some like way older version of the title. So yeah.
What, 119, 130, 150, 200, whatever it is, it's impressive.
So someone's in the chat and said, do I have a Discord channel for chatting? Are you joking? Because you misspelled Discord.
Oh, Lambie? Was that Lambie?
No, pneumatistis. What the?
Wait. Is that like?
I can't do it.
Is it like? I don't know what even that means.
I think people are just trying to give me tongue twisters sometimes.
Well, pneuma, doesn't that stand for like? No, that's not lung. God, I need
It's
to do
actually episode 137. Oh yeah.
Okay, nice. Nice.
Daryl, I'm not bragging about my 10 million IQ points. Lol. No one is doing that. We're sitting around enjoying stuff. And you're like, oh my gosh. I'm going to tell you about measuring distances with a computer. I was thinking of naming a list of all the things I consider fallacies. And one of them is upward delegation, where people are like, oh, we'll just get the computer to do it. Because the computer could do all the things we can't. It's like, no, it can't. It can do one of the things you can't. And maybe it can do it a bit better. Well, yeah, definitely.
Better how? Mean better faster? Because that seems to be the only way I could consider a computer better at doing Boolean logic or whatever that it does.
Well, it can win at chess.
Okay.
So.
Well, these are complicated
That's
subjects.
not just speed. That's simulation of microstates. Like if you can explicitly put the microstates into a computer and then brute force the microstates and the microstates are accurate, well, yeah, you're going to get an answer faster, quote unquote, than a human could derive the same answer calculationally or whatever, like using numbers. But when a human goes to get that answer, same answer, they're not doing it that same way. So it doesn't really speak to what the efficiency ratio is between them or whatever you want to call it.
Is that because a computer algorithm, or what does a computer algorithm have different than a human mind behind it? What's the fundamental, I should say, let me ask a more specific question. What's the fundamental categorical difference that separates a computer algorithmic mind, quote unquote, from a human algorithmic mind, quote unquote?
The key difference? Centralized centralized identity. Like, even though you can
Okay.
argue the identity is centralized in the CPU or in the OS, it isn't in any meaningful way. Whereas our identity is centralized in a meaningful way, like a physically meaningful way.
Yeah, which is why all these people, because you just know you're you on some level. I don't think my computer knows that it's a computer. Is that how you determine that there's this?
Well, I said centralized identity, you said knows. We could talk about knows, sure, and say that
Oh, okay.
it's predicated on a centralized identity, sure. Knowledge, you could say, is like the deepest facet of fundamental identity.
So I wasn't wrong, but maybe I was just incomplete in thinking about this.
Oh, there's no way to be complete in words. There's a way to be
Ugh,
maximally incomplete, but like maximally complete within incompleteness. Yeah, you can do that, and it sounds,
yeah,
inspiring and poetic and all that stuff. But
maximally complete within incompleteness. When I hear that, there's a part of me. I mean, I know it. What you're. A part of me thinks it sounds like something comes out of some Deepak Chopra New Age book. When you say trite stuff like that, like or phrase it in that way. You know what I mean?
yeah, people on T-Jump server always say that. Deepak Chopra, Deepak Chopra. I'm like, are you okay? I am not Deepak Chopra, and it's like,
Well, that's obvious. I mean, you're
oh,
light years better. Light years and light years, and I don't know how many light years you could say, and you're still probably that much better.
not that bad. I mean, I don't think he's bad.
He's always annoyed me. But there's also like a vibe you get about a certain kind of person too that I think impacts the judgment. I mean, you're just cooler and more interesting than anything I've ever read from Deepak Chopra or seen in TV interviews.
I mean, the other big difference is that a computer needs an external source of power, and life doesn't.
That makes
Like, we're
sense.
subsisting entirely within our solar system, which is subsisting entirely within our cosmos, and a computer is really something that, yeah. So I'd say that's on two fronts. It's different. One, a centralized identity. Two, the necessity of an external power source. I actually use that as an argument against the whole, well, DNA code language, infinity complex, therefore God bullshit argument from everyone knows who.
Oh, yeah. That is such
There's
a terrible argument. How could people believe that shit?
When you're projecting how you're understanding things on other people. Like, most people, their fixation is a fear of rejection.
Social rejection,
No, just
mostly?
rejection. Yeah, and one of the nodes of it is social rejection.
No.
Social rejection, sure. I mean, it's probably one of the most fundamental parts of it, sure. But it's a
No.
general rejection,
Yeah.
fear of rejection, unqualified rejection. So I'm just saying, yeah, you can think of it in terms of social rejection, but it does go beyond that.
Okay. Yeah.
So
You're
if
so
all
damn germy.
behavior, if all behavior is simply based around minimizing a perception of the risk of social or whatever rejection or social rejection, if that's what it is, then it's just memorized responses with zero understanding underlying it. Now, I'm not saying that's how everybody sees it, but that's the minimum energy solution. The minimum energy solution is really just
Yeah.
what is the simplest, what is the cheapest thing that explains what we're looking at. But also understanding that statistically, not every being will embody the minimum energy solution because of variability.
Hmm. You're so damn German in the way you just analytically make that so beautiful. I like it. It's hard to top that.
Oh, thanks.
Mm.
And yeah, Dawn is saying females are more risk averse, so maybe it's partially that is more in my field of perception.
Ooh, that's interesting.
But to get insight is a matter of generating a simulation of the most probable microstates. And the most probable microstates is that majority will be abiding by the minimum energy solution, which is simply conformity through repetition or copying. I think my old coworker said monkey see, monkey do.
There is a question here, and I guess I don't immediately know the answer to it myself. So it just makes me wonder. I mean, I probably don't understand something here about the nature of food and eating, but Daryl Frost says, quote unquote, external power and energy source. I mean, you eat, right? I mean, so wouldn't any food you consume be quote unquote energy? I
Hence
guess
why
that
I,
would.
hence why I qualified what I said with it's contained to the solar system.
Oh, okay.
But then you
Okay.
can say, well, our computers are also contained to the solar system. It's like we had to build the infrastructure to power them. They wouldn't exist if we hadn't built them. We were built by the environment. Different. It's like math versus English. They're not the same. You
Okay.
can say they're both languages, but you're kind of making the term language mean almost nothing at that point.
So you have this huge uh, dilution of terms that definitionally that makes analysis more difficult, if not impossible. Am I correct?
Well, by saying math is a language and English is a language, you're making it so that you're basically dividing out the consciousness problem and how language comes about.
Yeah, which you can't really do without just coming up with batshit crazy
Well, you can't
explanations.
you can, but you have to know that you're averaging it out. That's my whole point. Is like if you start with
Uh,
if you start with primitives that actually axiomatize the conscious effect or whatever you want to call it, self relation, these
mm,
errors won't come up. It just really seems from experience. Like I'm looking at the field of biology and artificial intelligence, and self-reported people are like, well, we don't really know how it works and blah blah blah, but it still works. Both fields are saying this. It's like it's not a good sign. I'd be fucking humiliated to admit that if I was in either domain. Thank God I'm not. But frankly,
oh God, these institutions of quote unquote higher learning. I can't
no,
even
it's not
express
that.
it.
It's not even. It's like you can't even blame any Like I don't think you should blame the institutions. Honestly,
Really? What should be the
no blame isn't on the individual for not having higher standards for oneself and demanding rights from a government when it's supposed to be duties that are delivered to a government. So the whole framing is backwards.
oh, because rights assume something external comes down when really dharma, which is I think what also has duty as part. Oh, dharma means way. Well, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think dharmas always talk about how do you do what's right for your own development and the
It's hard to
development of those
talk
around
about because
you.
it means a lot of things. Like there's no real understanding of vocational relativism or whatever in this society. So I would say
Mm,
that teaching would be the acceptance of a couple of things.
okay.
Um, God, I don't even know how to put it into words. I don't like the term Kali Yuga, but it comes up a lot.
Mm,
Yeah, I have to think about it a little bit more because this is sort of a topic I haven't thought about for a while. So I'm a bit at a loss for words. So, but I do appreciate the inspiration to think about it. I'm just going to need to ponder it a little longer.
I'm grateful I could share my questions and ponderings with you. It's a real honor. I'm I'm quite humbled and happy.
Daryl, can you talk about what the heck you're talking about? Honestly, he's so annoying, but I like talking to him because he reminds me of being a scientist. Even though he's a friggin' engineer, obviously, and he pissed me off a lot. But whatever. It's fine.
Oh. Well, what's the difference between, okay, how do, at least in terms of,
Scientists are like, why is this going on, man? And engineers are like, invert the fucking rotator thingy and we'll just fucking brute force that right now. And then we're going to go out and get hammered and then go for prostitutes. Yeah. I'm exaggerating, but
yeah, well, I mean, is there a better way to marry the temperaments of the physicist and the engineer?
bring in a bunch of people who are in a completely different thing and make them realize, oh, you're actually not so different after all.
Yes,
No, just
yes.
kidding.
How the hell do you do that? 'Cause there should be no reason for this, like, bifurcation, in my view. And
Things aren't going the way I
physicists
want. Terrorism time.
well, I mean, in
That was
academia,
a
I mean,
joke, by the way.
oh, my bad. I missed that. I'm okay. I'm adult, and sometimes they
There's
can't tell
no
me.
way. That's the thing. Like, you can't brute force virtue. You can't intimidate people into virtue because by by utilizing the modality of intimidation, you're making it so that all you're going to get out of people is the bare minimum. It's like, oh, you're being an asshole to me. Well, fucking not going to work hard at all. Okay, I'll do the absolute minimum. So logically,
Yeah.
quote unquote, rationally, whatever you want to call it, that's not desirable.
No.
So what does a system that minimizes intimidation look like?
Good question. I don't. It's hard to imagine because in my life experience, I don't really know what that's like. So I welcome discussion on that. I'd love your insight.
I just think if everyone's maximally afraid of the same thing, then we have that as a common anchor to our human frailty.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I'm afraid of that I think a lot of people should be afraid of, but I could be wrong. Is having a shitty next life.
Oblivion, really. Oblivion is, I think, perhaps the scariest thing is the notion that everything one has ever done is ultimately meaningless. And I guess you could summarize that as oblivion, perhaps. But it's not a fact things might be meaningless. It's the creeping realization of what that meaninglessness means in terms of all the things that you think you've gone through. Because it doesn't just undermine your relationship to others, it undermines your relationship to yourself in a sense of how good your judgment was, aka not at all.
Well, that's tough for a lot of people to face, is that all of their judgments about very critical issues have been wrong for their entire lives. And the longer your life goes before you realize that, the harder it is to give that up. It seems like it's a loss aversion part of human psychology at work. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, sure, loss aversion is just a question of what loss is being averted. And we have a statistical distribution of loss being averted. What's the statistical majority? Well, the loss being averted is they don't want to be rejected from the crowd, whatever the crowd entails.
The herd lemming psychology.
Let's put it in a not demeaning way.
That's good. I like better definitions.
I don't like the thing of demeaning. To me, if I have to use it, it's because of every other thing has failed. So, Daryl wants to know if I could explain my understanding between an engineer and a scientist, just for clarity. Well, I went to school with these people, right? So in physics, you take a lot of classes with engineers. So I can distill a difference. And then when I was working, there were a bunch of people trained in science versus engineering. People in science are a lot more reserved. a lot more careful, a lot more calculating and precise and exacting, and we're a lot more public facing, although I think that was just my job in particular and not in general. But yeah, basically it comes down to fundamentally a question of what the role of the person operating a machine is, making measurements in relation to the measurements in the machine. And that's where the major divergence comes. Engineering is largely about defining a purpose and then working backwards from it, whereas science is about determining what is the best way to bring about function from form in theory. Not saying that that's really how it's going right now, but the scientists who are interested in philosophy, you'll find that they have, I don't want to say they all see things exactly the same way, but they're definitely a certain stripe.
Would it be fair to describe it qualitatively? There's a seeming synergy between clarity and convergence in certain views, maybe even axioms between, say, scientists as opposed to engineers.
It's just a personality thing, really. Like a lot of people get pushed into these things from their parents, so it's not quite the same as somebody whimsically following it because their, hippie parents insisted that they indulge their fantastical dreams.
Yeah. God, it's amazing how much people just do things off the social pressure. Because when you talk about people just to do things because
That's all that you have ever. That's all that we ever, any of us ever was before we got to higher realizations. That's like the base modality of consciousness. Like we're still, even in higher states of awareness, like susceptible to social pressure. It's not bad to be susceptible to social pressure. It's just something that has to be incorporated into one's body of knowledge. It's actually quite nice.
Shouldn't it be, or at least it would seem to me it would be incumbent upon leadership-minded folks to want social pressure to be positive for spiritual and human development as much as possible, as opposed to social pressure being negative or regressive in terms of spiritual.
Well, there is no such thing as positive and negative. There's goals and there's incentives towards goals, and there's enough variability between people that you can't incentivize them in a cut and dry, one size fits all way. There's like you could identify a class, not a class, or a domain of incentives that worked, but they wouldn't work for everybody.
Okay.
And then you have to understand there's like self-referential effects. If somebody gets the feeling that somebody is running a con on them or playing games with them, there's a reaction there of shutting down, right? So that self-referentiality, i.e. like awareness that comes about of whatever being imposed synthetic on a system, how do you account for that? It becomes basically impossible.
Yeah, and it would seem to me you can't measure that. Certainly not by any of the metrics Doooovid mentioned.
That's hilarious that you say that about your dad being a chemical engineer and a pot smoker daily, because the guy I know who like has a degree in chemistry and actually kind of did work in chemistry, but eventually just settled on being a janitor. Yeah, he was really into that kind of stuff too. So it's just interesting. Like, I'm not coming to conclusions as to whether somebody, I'm not saying these are perfect predictors of personality, but yeah, there's definitely a difference. Anyone who went to school actually for physics, not philosophy of physics, whatever the hell that is, actual physics and engineering will know that there's differences that can be picked up on broad strokes between the respective personalities. So specifically with regards to what it is they expect out of their study. Because engineering is almost always job security. Physics, sometimes it's about a job or being a teacher or whatever, but sometimes it's just, I don't want to say a metaphysical LARP, but a quest of, I want to know how the universe works out in a good way.
Well, there's something pure in that motive, if you ask me. I just want to find out why things work because I want to know why things work. There's immense value in that. I look at people who have that kind of curiosity about anything as just that intention being something to celebrate because it seems so goddamn rare.
So, Daryl, let me guess, you're an engineer based on your last comment. Engineers do science. We do science. We do science. Science.
It's like a 2-year-old saying, "I do not want my peas tonight."
It's like, do you have any fucking clue how few people are doing science? Come on. Do you have any idea what it means to do science? We got to come up with a new theory as to how a mechanism works that hasn't already been come up with. That's pretty hard, considering how much theory is already out there. That's what science is. Science is saying this theory, this domain is too kerfuffle and it needs to be localized or refocused in some sense. Science comes in to offer a better model of the mechanics of that system. Who's doing that? You know, anybody in the audience want to raise your hand as to who has actually been at work doing that for any significant amount of time? Inverting, calculators to torture computers into printing out weird things that make you feel smart, notwithstanding.
Is it safe to assert that there's one person in this little cozy corner of the 20 or so people watching this who has done some of that work?
What? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, there's someone building models around here. Yeah.
I really like what Don Willis said. My engineer friends look at everything as a potential problem. My experience. Yes, that's one of the strengths of engineering is what they call reverse engineering. So I would say that engineering versus science, they're not quite complementary domains, but they definitely have complementary strengths and weaknesses to some extent. Maybe complementary weaknesses. Because engineers, in a way, just... I'm thinking Steve Wozniak arguably was an engineer. When was the last engineer who pushed things forward? Nikola Tesla? I don't know if he would have called himself that. It's also questionable to what extent he pushed things forward. There's this like weird personality cult built up around him, but what's actually substantiating his greatness? There's,
I wouldn't consider Tesla an engineer. I mean, the last great engineer is Von Braun with rockets, because that's.
I mean, it's ridiculous because there's this huge overlap, right? I mean, it's a huge overlap because a scientist has to engineer their experiments, right? They have to design their experiments, engineer the whatever you want to call it, apparatus. So there's obviously a huge overlap, but notionally, it's.
Wait, when did Wozniak die?
Who?
Steve Wozniak. I mean, how old is he? Or is he alive still? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm so ignorant.
I'm pretty sure he's still alive. Last I heard of him, he's doing a crypto coin, which I found was incredibly boomerish and midwit here, but that's just me. I'm too harsh.
Well, you're not a big fan of crypto stuff. Well, neither am I.
It's going in the wrong direction. It's like, instead of becoming accountable for one's future in terms of wealth, it's basically removing accountability to another level of non-accountability. It's like, you're going in the wrong direction. Astrology for men.
It really seems that way. I mean, it's crypto coins. It's like being it's like further casinoification of finance, and it just rubs me the wrong way. The whole approach to crypto. I'm very unpopular with my anti-crypto stances, and a lot of.
That's one battle I'm actually choosing not to, because that's the level on which that becomes an issue is when people have already accepted way more of my premises than they actually have. But I would say it'd be fun to make a cryptocurrency that was also virtual reality and have an idea for that. Obviously don't want to say on the stream what it is because I don't want someone stealing it. Not that I think that, I honestly don't think this project could succeed without me due to me being, I would be the glue of the project, so to speak, but I think it would be a lot of fun.
Oh, I wouldn't want you to say anything on here.
I want to do virtual reality, but the condition of doing it is that it has to be a hyperbolic programming language. because I get motion sickness with the Euclidean ones. That is not just me trying to shove in my mathematical dogma, by the way. That is an honest to gosh thing. I get sick. So if I'm going to do a crypto VR thing, it's going to be awesome. I have to not yak when I go into it myself.
Well, I'd rather be in your verse than the metaverse, but I'm chang.
That's right. Something metaverse-ish, something along those lines.
Introverse versus the metaverse. I don't know.
I don't like a competitive thing. I prefer the collaboration vibe.
Yeah, I do too, I guess. But I don't know. I was thinking it just sounded like a fun movie title. The two battling.
I'm just thinking like this could be the application of quantum computers, VR. It solves the problem. If you just simulate it with light, then the energy is not a problem. You just need a quantum computer in your house that isn't you.
Aren't there some 2 or 3 universities that are working on photonic quantum computing systems right now? Or maybe I'm wrong.
Wow. Master Beater just crushed my soul on so many levels. Yes, it's true. I definitely did work for the government and loved every second of it. So, but there were a lot of engineers at my job, more than scientists. So, wah.
Yeah, masturbator is I don't get how that's an own. Yeah.
Because apparently scientists are just in so much of the bubble of their own heads that they just can't get off, their asses to actually be contributing to society and churning out bridges, presumably.
Bridges to where?
Exactly.
See, the engineers can't answer that from that point of view. So it's a ridiculous question, it seems.
I just don't think people realize the level of non-bucks given here. Janitor,
I've worked that job before.
This guy is being a janitor changes literally nothing of my opinion on him. And I would still trust him more than in the 90s of all the percent people that I've ever met, It's nothing.
I've worked a lot of so-called like low wage, low level jobs, and I've been happy as hell. I don't really judge anything based on that. I don't know. People have very strange standards as far as I'm concerned. At least, I can sort of get why they do it that way, but from a deeper personal level, it's like, okay, my personal focus of attention and what I value is not aligned with that at all. So I give no fucks.
People have complex motivations. Things maybe resonate or don't, but who can put these things into words? I mean, come on. Most of the time, it's just a self-contemplation. So to go and put it into words, you can't do it because the only relevance or reference for it is your own self-contemplation. Words involves other people to some measure.
And no denotation can ever escape connotation. That's just the reality.
Daryl said, yeah, that's true. I call that axiomatic containment. Daryl says that I never worked in science. There's these people on Discord who want to say that I never worked in science, and it's really hilarious. It's like, okay.
What are they talking about?
They just really like saying it, and I find it comical. Because it's like, I remember having to literally tell people, and I feel bad about it, we can't use Bayesian analysis. There's just not enough data by any stretch of anyone's imagination. How would you even, without even talking about whether it makes sense in the first place as a premise.
Well, wouldn't that would seem to be integral to the question, and people shunting that aside seems ridiculous to me. At least the way I like to approach thinking. I don't want to generalize outside of, my knowledge. One thing I've done very badly a couple of years ago when I first got into streaming is I still sort of, it's also my personal style of communication lends myself to make these mistakes too. So I got to clean this up on a deeper level. But I just make way too many assertions without admitting, what I'm not so sure of. And, making assertions without at least admitting that you're not sure of something is just very bad form. It's better just to be very honest that I have opinions. This is either what I've experienced or what I've seen. There's a lot I don't know, so I'm just going to seek out more information and be open to learn. I mean, that has to be, I think, the approach. And I don't think I really have that. And I think more recently I've moved into just a more chill space because I've adopted a more open approach, I think. But maybe my self-analysis is wrong. I don't know. But I appreciate you kind of helping me, coaching me in so many ways. I mean, patient with my stubborn German pig ass on that. So I appreciate you on that front. I'm a stubborn bastard about some things, and I'm a prick-waving, arrogant bastard too. And, you always got to improve that kind of stuff.
I would say it was, yeah. I'm very glad to hear you say that. And just to answer Daryl, it sounds like I know what you did last summer. I know what you did after your degree. And you think that was science. Sure. Ha ha ha.
Well, maybe
Science is coming up with fucking models. Like, I know that the majority of what I did at that job wasn't science. That's my whole fucking point. Like, there's hardly anybody literally doing science. It doesn't mean that a person, can't understand the philosophy of science. Very limited purpose to just repeating talking points one has read elsewhere if one has not thought them through and accepted them, not just because they were, doled out by some authority figure, but because you actually agree with the premise. I.e., can you reason the premise from start to finish? Can you reason the initial premise to the final premise? Because a lot of times you find people really struggling with that and then getting pissed, and it's not good. Go ahead.
What's funny is, to your point, it's all these people who, because they retweet Bill Nye or Neil deGrasse Tyson, think they know science, and you ask them for like, okay, can you show me a chain of causation and some evidence, and figure out the logical chain of thinking, and they're either dumbfounded or just respond with ad homs and shout at you like a spoiled child. It's pretty hilarious.
I guess I should be clear here that science is one way to discover certain things. It's certainly not a supreme authority on knowledge, but it can tell us, it can point us in the right direction for certain things, aka relating to matter, materialism. But the supposed strength of science is that you make a model that gives novel, testable predictions. It's just largely misunderstood. But yeah.
Well, that's because I think that testable predictions thing comes from Francis Bacon, I think, and I guess I don't trust the eternal Anglo to get that kind of stuff right.
Well, I mean, that would not be the reason to deny a theory.
No, it wouldn't, and because I freely admit I don't have the knowledge to fully deny it, but typically when I see reasoning of people like Francis Bacon, they've proven to be kind of incorrect about a number of other things. So
honestly, let's not even talk about it because I don't even know who this person is.
Okay.
I've lost my train of thought here. Yeah, I wanted to focus on.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, my stuff. Let's see here. Engineering is the system creation by using real elements. Not quite. Science is really making theories and testing them. That's why medicine has science in it, because the doctor's got to be like, oh, I've got somebody coming in and presenting with these symptoms, and I make a theory about what's wrong with them, right? And then the theory may be validated or not. It may be validated but end up being wrong. And that's where I guess these Bayesian statistics, when you have that level of data and you really have nothing else to go on, completely blind, it does make sense to use Bayesian statistics because you can estimate prior odds, and it does mean something that hypothesis could differ from reality in a way where you can actually derive information from that. Great. Awesome. That doesn't generalize, though, because in reality, the probability of anything is 100%. Your own hot take on it doesn't matter at all. Did that make sense? I don't know if that was too abstract or what.
Little abstract. I
Engineering is based on, we want this, build it. That's engineering. Science is some shit's going on. Let me come up with a simplified geometry, usually, and analytics, aka equations. Let me come up with that describes it accurately enough that it tell me future states if I know present state of a system accurately enough. That's science in theory.
Oh, I like that.
Very
I like
different.
that. I like that.
But engineering is applied science.
Yeah, you can't build a bridge unless you respect the laws of physics. I mean, right?
Well, that's the whole idea, is that once it's engineering, that the science is no longer happening. You can go ahead and implement it any which way, but it's nobody's pushing up against the laws of Newton or the presumptions of Newtonian physics as an engineer that I'm aware of. That's all. Because that's just not what engineering is doing. It's solution oriented, whereas I guess you could say science is process oriented, because it's really always about the strength of the hypothesis, which is a process, like necessarily.
I mean, the development of the hypothesis is a process itself.
No. Yes, that's true, but that's not what I was
Okay.
saying. What I was saying is that a hypothesis is definitionally a process. Like, for example, gravity. Well, the hypothesis is that the process is that mass is pulling other mass towards it. That's a process. Mass exists, and then it has an effect. And then that effect can change depending on how much energy is in different regions. But ultimately, that's what's happening.
Okay. Okay.
And then you have to invoke philosophy if the language of science is falling short of what it is that you're trying to describe.
Now, is invoking philosophy, is that risky?
Well, it's there's the risk of continuing on with science that you can demonstrate to yourself creates fuck ups in certain regions, has problematic regions, for example. Or you can understand why there's problematic regions. It's always a trade-off. Like, if your thing is accurate in 90% of regions, is that good enough? But where it fails, it really fails. Like, to me, that's not good enough. It shouldn't fail anywhere, basically, in my view. There should not ever be a causal break.
See, I like that. There's something about the intention behind that statement that I just resonate with. Like, it's a badass.
To subject a system to the principle of causal closure is not a physical assertion. It's a pre-physical or metaphysical assertion. And so that's philosophy. Anything deciding metaphysics is philosophy. And I think that's the major distinction with science, is that once you're into science, you're kind of assuming that the metaphysics is not happening anymore, and whatever metaphysics is fixed to the scientific application thereof. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, if let's just say, for instance, you're the engineer building the bridge, you're a bit tunnel visioned because you got so many other processes.
It's actually not tunnel vision. The engineer has the opposite of tunnel vision. The engineer actually has to take a very broad vision because they're the ones signing off on the entire project. They're the ones who have to take a bird's eye view and say, okay, structurally, this is all right. That's the challenge, and what makes being an engineer so hard, and why engineers get so butthurt when scientists are like, well, whatever. But it's like, let's be real. Like, I've known some really smart scientists and engineers. The best problem solvers I ever knew, though, they were engineers. But it was a particular domain of problems. So.
Okay. There's always what I appreciate about you is there's always a lot of subtlety with specificity at the same time in your analysis of pretty complex subjects. And when I'm not talking to you, I feel myself, oh, I'm pretty good at this stuff. Then I talk to you and realize, I might be pretty good for a beginner, I guess, but shit, I got a long way to go, and it's pretty cool to see where you can go.
Yeah.
You know?
I had this other idea where
Yeah.
I don't know if I sent it to you, but maybe not, but it was my diagram of how to make a particular type of quantum computer of signal decomposition.
Yes, you showed me, I
Four?
think, one. Well, I have one image from you from that. Yes, I think you showed that to me, maybe 3-4 days ago, if I recall. No,
Yeah.
2 days ago. Friday.
So Daryl, did I scientifically predict that you're indeed an engineer? Did I scientifically predict that, Daryl? Did I? Because it sounds like I did. This guy's been trolling me for a while, though I'm sure in his mind he's just trying to, quote, teach me a lesson.
What does Daryl have to teach, I wonder?
Well, he can see beyond the illusion of numbers. One thing that's really good about where the conversations are going is that the same question of what is the actual definition of a language keeps coming up.
Okay, be more specific. Like, okay, where are you finding what domains of intellectual discourse or debate are you finding that these questions are all appearing synchronously? I guess.
Just a class of questions arising to which the answer is, it depends whether language is symbolic or more than just symbolic.
My quick and dirty intuition would tell me, and maybe it's totally wrong, is that intuition is not merely symbolic. There's more dimension to it than that.
Well, it's definitional. So if you choose a definition, and if you say, by definition, language is only symbols, then we have the answer. But that definition's incoherent.
Yeah.
So it's got to be symbols plus something, and then there's a different symbols plus something different, which are two, maybe even more than two different competing definitions of language that no one is really talking about which one we're actually using.
So what are these two competing definitions?
Well, they haven't even been explored yet. It's just the fact that the questions coming up is, to me, a step in the right direction. Like, it takes a while to answer certain questions. Anything alluding to fundamentality or universality, transcendentals, is they kind of meta come up before they come up.
Well, it was like a thread I was on a Norman book the other day, and there was a long thread about what is reality and how do we even ask that question. I mean, that's a thread I was on earlier today, and it seems like implicitly that thread is invoking this language issue you're talking about.
Well, we have to commit to a definition that makes sense. And what makes sense as a definition for what exists is something that never changes. And our material world is constantly changing. So that's as close as you can really get to a paradox.
Yeah, this doesn't remind me of like, remember this is such a dumb, maybe this Greek philosophy is dumber and dumber the more I look at it. It's like, how did we think this was the apex of civilization again? How were we propagandized to believe this bullshit? But anyway, there's a Theseus's ship problem. Like, if you take the planks off of each part of Theseus' ship, when is it no longer Theseus's ship? And, these people, I remember, classic scholars are feigning or in reality stumped by this seeming puzzle. And they don't even realize the kinds of questions they should be asking when they even approach this problem. So it's just, the whole thing is just mental masturbation.
Well, what's the question? When is it the same? When does it stop being a ship?
It's a ship, yeah. What condition of change is...
It's fucking stupid.
Oh, I know. mean,
The answer is
people-
obvious, right? The answer is so
Yeah.
fucking obvious. It's like if you define the ship as material, then it's not the same ship as soon as one part changes. If you define the ship as functional, then it's the same ship for so long as it's operating as the original ship. That's not that hard.
Oh, I know, but I remember going to graduate school courses, 15 years ago, where people
What's
asked
wrong with that answer? That's what I don't understand is why is that why does that answer not suffice? What is wrong with that answer?
Well, I never thought there was anything wrong with your answer either, but it's the fact that all these other people are so stumped by this and can't accept an answer that always struck me.
Well, what the fuck are their answers? I'm scared
Well,
to
you
look.
see, they won't answer that.
I guess it's the same as the grain heap thing. It's like a grain has no obligation to correspond to a heap. The notion isn't paradoxical, and that would only apply to a metaphysical primitive that definitionally can't not exist, basically. So that would be like saying, well, if this is conscious, and how come this isn't conscious? But that would never happen because consciousness is a metaphysical primitive, and you will find it no matter where you look, quote unquote, because looking involves consciousness.
Yeah.
A heap and a grain of sand aren't metaphysical primitives. And what I run up when in the conversation with people is they're like, "Oh, I deny metaphysics." It's like, well, to me, that's a nonsensical assertion. There's no such thing as denying metaphysics. In effect, you still have metaphysics, you just won't understand them, like most people.
Well, I remember the first time I met you, which because it was in all these poopertarian discussion groups.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was going after that
Yeah, and I just
spatter,
remember,
Kurt
yes,
Doolittle.
the Blavatsky clone, as I call him, because he certainly had the ugly looks of Blavatsky. Would say metaphysics doesn't exist. Like I remember him doing tons of posts about that kind of stuff, and I just like that always struck me as kind of wrong. Although I continued along for a while, but that was always weird that they believe that or believe something adjacent to that. From my
Well, I
recollection.
think the logic is metaphysics is teleological, and teleology is Christianity, and Christianity is invalid.
Oh well, yeah. I mean that's
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably a good. I didn't even think of that as. But every time I look at Christianity, I just see more subversion. So I'm not surprised that that's probably a contributing factor to not understanding this problem. We have a spiritual mind virus that's made us not really do the science correctly or the metaphysics.
Self-deception. It's like the
Yeah.
answer should feel good. Christianity basically tells people that the answer should feel good. And that's true in the long term, but in the short term, sometimes answers and realizations are shocking and not a very good feeling. But that passes. So the virtue is like patience for the bad feeling to pass and not the, well, there can't be any bad feeling. Everything has to be a good feeling. Ah, Jesus. It's like, but you can see why people maybe would find that appealing
Well,
if they
yeah.
actually believed it.
Well, American evangelical Christianity is such a health and wealth cult and a feel good, let's just sing and dance together cult that totally makes sense to me based on my experience of those kind of people. I just want to
Probably
feel
good.
good all the time.
Yeah, probably a good time to wrap up soon. I'm getting a little hungry. I've had a great
Oh, no
chat
problem.
though. And thanks for joining, and look forward to the next one. Thanks for the people in the chat.
Hopefully I was a good guest.
Oh yeah, thanks for joining. I appreciate your contribution.
Oh, okay. I always want to be a good positive influence on the community. That's important to me. Okay. I love your streams. You're an awesome gal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Yeah, I guess yeah, everybody see you next Sunday, if not sooner. I'm not sure what's going on this week. Might think about this computer programming stuff more. Wouldn't it be fun to acquire some of those quantum computer processor things that article was talking about and then build a mini hologram projector? We need some scientists and engineers for that. Alrighty.
Yeah, but that's just so to say, a worthless opinion of.
It's so important that she can't be told, she won't be told that it's wrong. And
bringing it back to Church of Entropy and her attack dog Gandalf the White.
Why don't you learn to shut up and fuck your goddamn logic?
they control the media, and the media is capable of making the sheeple believe in anything.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, we've had these streams, and I've been doing with Church of Entropy, and she's been bringing on new people, and like we did those streams on like stream etiquette. We walked through like the technology.
I have like very strongly negative opinions of the kind of Brundle clique.
Is she trying to garner herself cult prestige by associating herself with a retard?